Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Jacob and Jacob podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Pear. As always, joined by my co-host, Jacob Orbaum. And today, our very special guest is ESPN's NFL insider, Field Yates. Field, thank you so much for coming on today.
I appreciate you, Jake and Jake. I love the idea, the name. I'm excited to be here with you, gentlemen, and looking forward to talking about anything and everything.
Well, let's get right into it, Field. So, for ESPN, you're covering fantasy football, you're an NFL insider, you're doing some podcasts, you're on TV. So, do you ever get the time to sleep?
You know what? It's funny. I'm actually, I would say that sleep is, let me turn my email off so I'm not screwing up the audio of this podcast before it's even really gotten going here. Let me start at the answer in 3, 2, 1, or we can just keep this all unedited. Don't worry about it either way. Yes, sleep is something that I find, certainly with some regularity. One thing about this job is it's really great is while every day is different, I would say like our schedule is sort of like a snowflake. During the football season, you can develop some routine, right? Obviously, news can come at any moment and that could pivot the day or the schedule you have planned. But I usually know, generally speaking, hey, Monday usually looks like this, consists of that. Tuesday includes this and that. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, those are NFL practice days. Saturday is usually the quiet day. And then Sunday is absolute mayhem. So much like coaches and players become creatures of habit, we tend to do the same in the media. And that's helped me throughout my time at ESPN to manage the various responsibilities that are on my plate.
So let's talk about how you got to ESPN, because you were with the Kansas City Chiefs for 2 seasons and you interned with the New England Patriots for 4 summers. So how did you end up in the journalism and broadcasting field?
Yeah, by complete accident is what I would say. So after I left Kansas City, and I was 23 at the time, I believe. I graduated from college in 2009 at 21, 22. So call it 23, 24 years old, somewhere in there. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I was going to go back home, which for me was Massachusetts, where I lived until recently, and just decided to sort of figure out what was next on the fly. After a little while of not working in football, I started to miss football dearly. It had kind of been my whole life in so many ways. And I ended up starting a blog and writing for a bunch of websites, but I was unable to gain traction with people that were a little bit further up the media ranks than myself until I got an email back from a gentleman named Mike Greenbergs, who covers the Patriots for ESPN. I always say he's the single best team reporter that I think, period, regardless of establishment or sport. Mike is also now someone that I feel so fortunate to call a best friend. But at the time, Mike responded back to me and made an investment in me. And what I learned from Mike, amongst many other things, is that there is something very powerful in paying things forward. And there's something very powerful in remembering where you yourself came from, because Mike may not be where he is at the top of the food chain and Patriots coverage, if not for somebody taking a chance on him. Mike took a chance on me. I went down and helped him. And I say help a little bit, that's almost a generous description, because frankly, I don't think he even needed my help to cover the 2012 NFL draft. But the Patriots had 2 first-round picks that night. They used them on Chandler Jones and Dante Hightower. Mike allowed me to be there and help a little bit along the way. That turned into me going with him to OTAs, training camp, and sticking around during the season. And what's really cool about ESPN, something I think is a great strength of the company, is that what they do is if they find out that you can do one thing well, they then find out, can you do 2 things? Can you do 3 things? Can you do 5 or 10 things well? And while my initial responsibilities for ESPN were to cover the Patriots on a day-to-day basis, because they had such a great reporter in Mike Greenbergs, they didn't necessarily need me there. They needed me elsewhere. And my role has grown organically. I've had incredible people invest in me along the way. Mike, as I mentioned, Adam Schefter has been great to me. Seth Markman, our boss, took a chance on me when I was as green could be. And I've been so fortunate to have great mentors in those men and some others along the way that have made a huge impact on me.
Have there been any ways, or you go?
I know you got it.
Have there been any ways that you've paid Mike's favor back to other people at ESPN?
Well, I try to do my best as much as I can. And, this year has been interesting in this regard. But as much as I can, I love to do things like, this podcast right here and have a conversation with the two Jacobs, that's something that is meaningful to me. And I know you guys are probably going to take my job one day. And at that point, I'll be mad. But in the meantime, I love being a part of this podcast. And I found that as much as I can, I like to take part in podcasts like this. And I try to keep up with the email correspondence when I can. Frankly, it can be, I shouldn't say difficult in the sense that it's not worth it, but difficult because there are so many people that are interested in getting into the business. So I'm trying to keep up as much of it as I can. But I found that where time and opportunity presents itself, I try to do my best to capitalize on that and help people that I think are, going to do a great job of covering the NFL or other sports or anything in media for a long, long time.
Hey, well, we appreciate you doing this podcast a lot once again. And but I want to turn back to your time in New England. And what's it like to see a guy like Tom Brady work on a daily basis and sort of see how he goes through his daily routine, just like up close and personal?
Yeah, I would just say that what I really appreciate about Tom is that every decision that Tom makes is with the sole purpose of continuing his NFL career at a high level. He was meticulous. He was prepared. He was dedicated to his routine. He was an excellent teammate. He still is, all these things. Incredibly selfless. One thing that can happen is, Tom entered the league as almost every rookie does, as a 21, 22-year-old out of Michigan. Halfway through his career, he was probably still the oldest guy on the team, 31, 32 years old. He evolved a little bit as a person. He became a father. He was a more seasoned guy, but he always remained the same level of teammate, somebody that other teammates looked toward and understood that they can confide in. And Tom was an excellent leader to so many, remains an excellent leader to so many, but he always was focused on his process. And that's not going to stop. I know that, 45 may be what he's been discussing as a stated goal to play until, but I'm never going to count Tom Brady out. So he may play for 5 more years at this rate, and it wouldn't surprise me.
So this season, do you have Brady winning the Super Bowl again with the Buccaneers? What's your Super Bowl pick?
I would think my Super Bowl pick right now would be a rematch. We're having this conversation on May 13th.
A little early.
I'm putting this one in pencil, if that's okay. It's in pencil. I do want to workshop this a little bit more if need be. I want to see how some things unfold. But my early instinct is a Chiefs-Bucks rematch. I would go with the Bucks, but I feel like I'm going to be a little bit of a fence sitter right now and say that I'm not quite sure. But that's my early instinct.
I like it.
Hey, we like it. We like it. So let's turn to the NFL, the upcoming season. And, of course, the NFL draft, I think, just about 2 weeks ago from today, maybe? Or maybe a little over that, maybe 3 weeks.
2 weeks ago today, that's right, yeah.
So who do you think had the best draft day and why?
So I thought there were some picks that I thought were great. And, it's hard to say just one team is a winner because I did like a lot of teams' processes. So, and processes can be very different. And I'm not trying to be a homer here, but I thought the Eagles did very well to pick up an extra first-round pick and still land Devontae Smith. Now, I understand they had to trade a third-round pick to move up from 12 to 10, but still, the net return is close to a first-round pick to land a guy that if they had taken him at 6, if they had stayed there, no one would have said, what are the Eagles doing? They would have said, wow, what a home run pick that was. So I love the process for Philadelphia. I love the first day process for the Giants. They were a team where their needs and their fits at pick 11 might not have been like, there certainly were players that would have merited selection of pick number 11, but they picked up huge value and an extra first round pick a year from now via the Bears and got a really good player in Kadarius Toney, even though they already had some pretty good depth at wide receiver. So I like the trade back by the Giants. I thought the Chargers and Patriots did really smart things in standing pat, and there's some risk involved, no doubt. But the Chargers and Patriots were two teams who had a huge need going into the draft. Left tackle for the Chargers, quarterback for the Patriots. Most mock drafts did not have Rashawn Slater of the Chargers lasting all the way to 13. Maybe he was off the board by 9, maybe he was off the board by 11, but the Chargers stood pat, and they landed a player that I think is going to be a big-time piece of their offense for the next 10 years. The Patriots, as we know, have Cam Newton under contract for this upcoming year, but there's no guarantee that he, if he plays really well, he could become a free agent and he could potentially sign somewhere else. And if he doesn't play well because he struggled down the stretch last year, well, then they're in trouble. And they stood pat at 15. They landed Mac Jones, a guy who earlier in the pre-draft process looked like a potential option at number 3 overall. So I do think the Patriots and Chargers, obviously a very different process than the Eagles and the Giants, but 2 teams I thought did very well for themselves.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the Chargers and the Patriots. I think those were both really good picks at where they were, and it'll be exciting to see how Herbert does in his second season with that big left tackle and Rashawn Slater. But I want to turn back to the Giants pick and Kadarius Toney, another wide receiver. They already have 3 pretty good wide receivers in Galladay, Slayton, and Shepard. Why do you think the Giants wanted to pick up another wide receiver in this draft if they already had 3 solid receivers?
Well, I think they felt like Kadarius Toney was a really unique guy, which a lot of people that evaluated him felt that way too, is that Sterling Shepard's a good slot receiver, but Kadarius Toney is the most sudden guy on their team, basically the minute he puts on a jersey. He is so good with the ball in his hands. He's got such incredible, it's like watching my friend Mina Kimes, the great Mina Kimes, our ESPN NFL analyst, described him or posted a video of him basically like he was playing, a game of Frogger, right? When he's like maneuvering through traffic, but no one can get a hand on him. And that's accurate for Kadarius Toney, that they might have a player who at his best could be, and I know that this comparison probably gets thrown around too much, but the good version of Percy Harvin, who play a running back, play a receiver, give him, jet sweeps, give him hands off out of the backfield. You could throw him, you could throw stuff down the field too. So Kadarius Toney, maybe it was a position that didn't strike people as much of a need in huge sum, but you're the Giants. He's not like the other receivers you have. He's certainly not like Kenny Galladay, who's 6'4". Darius Slayton is a very vertically inclined threat, and Sterling Shepard's closer to Kadarius Toney, but Toney's a different level of shifting.
So let's talk about Toney's teammate at the University of Florida, Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts going number 4 to Atlanta. Do you believe that Pitts was the right pick, or do you believe that Atlanta should have gone in the quarterback direction for an heir apparent to Matt Ryan?
I thought it was an interesting philosophical discussion that they had to address. And I think they sort of did it early on by restructuring the contract of Matt Ryan, making it really difficult to get out from his contract next year. So once they did that, it kind of made me think they were headed towards the tight end position. And I do believe that if you're going to take a guy 4th overall, you need to feel very confident that he is, the franchise cornerstone of an offense or defense, or can be. And Kyle Pitts is that special. He was my 2 favorite players to watch during the pre-draft process were Jalen Waddle and Kyle Pitts. Waddle, just most explosive guy in a long time that I've seen. And Kyle Pitts, I don't know that I've seen a tight end like him, maybe in 10 years, maybe ever. Honestly, I certainly am aware of guys that, Gronk, I've always said the most unique tight end I've ever seen at the NFL level is apex, is Gronk. But Kyle Pitts, the stuff he was doing, the way that he was embarrassing linebackers and defensive backs and anybody thrown his way, it was absurd. So he's an excellent route runner, very gifted pass catcher, good in competitive catch situations, good with the football outside of his frame, good with the football inside of his frame. He had good instincts from the red zone, good willing blocker. He's the real deal. He is as talented as it gets as a tight end.
What would you say his fantasy football outlook is for this upcoming season?
Well, there's a track record of rookie tight ends not making their mark early. That being said, you don't find rookie tight ends quite like Kyle Pitts. So my instinct tells me that Kyle Pitts will end up being drafted between maybe 4th and 7th in most leagues amongst tight ends. I figure that Kittle and Kelsey first, and then Kittle are 1-2 amongst tight ends. And then we'll see how it unfolds from there. Probably Darren Waller 3rd, but I would think Darren Waller 3rd. And then 4th is, it could be TJ Hawkinson in some leagues. It could be Kyle Pitts. It could be Mark Andrews. Those are some of the names that you're going to be discussing amongst others in that 4th tight end mix. So it wouldn't surprise me if based off of ability and just the excitement that Kyle Pitts goes really early.
And so Kyle Pitts, of course, on Atlanta. Matt Ryan, there was some uncertainty about what Atlanta would do it for. Would they pick a quarterback and sort of start the process of moving on from Matt Ryan? But they did not. Of course, they took Pitts. Matt Ryan is still there. What will it take for Matt Ryan to keep this job next season?
So I think, by the way, the coaching staff is probably pretty confident in him. I think, Matt Ryan is one of those quarterbacks who hasn't quite cratered, but people do feel like he's trended downward. I think Matt Ryan's a pretty solid, sort of above average quarterback. And I think to keep this job going forward, they're going to have to score a lot of points because I think defensively they're still going to be a work in progress. But I do believe that Matt Ryan is like rock solid as a player. And we've seen so many quarterbacks age well, right? It's not just Tom Brady. I mean, Drew Brees played into his 40s. Eli Manning played until his late 30s. We've got guys like Aaron Rodgers winning the MVP at the age of 37. I mean, it's pretty common now for these quarterbacks to keep pushing the age limit a little bit further and further. Russell Wilson showing zero signs of slowing down. So all these things make me feel like Matt Ryan has a chance to play out the rest of this contract in a best case scenario.
So you brought up Aaron Rodgers, and the main story in football right now is, will Aaron Rodgers be on the Green Bay Packers next season? Field, I got to know your opinion. Will Rodgers be the Packers quarterback week 1?
Yeah, I don't think so at this point. And again, these are May 13th predictions, right? But, one thing that I've noticed is that when a quarterback's upset, you usually don't really have one foot out the door and then find a way back in. Sometimes, you're based off principle and again, this does not seem to be about money for Aaron Rodgers. It's not about money. He's first of all made a ton of money, and second of all, going to make a lot of money. Even if they guaranteed the rest of his deal or gave him a raise, like, to me, this feels like things that are deeper than the contract. And when that becomes the case, it becomes a very slippery slope for the team and the player alike. So it would not surprise me if Aaron Rodgers is playing elsewhere. I don't have a great suggestion. I think we've all talked about Denver or Las Vegas or Miami as teams that make some sense, but it feels like Aaron Rodgers' days as a Packer could be numbered.
Now, Jordan Love, obviously, sort of the Packers took him round 1 2 years ago. A little bit controversial. Rodgers not the happiest about the pick. If he is forced to step up and take the starting job for Green Bay, what do you expect from him?
I don't know, because so the reason why I say that is none of us really know, right? He didn't take a single snap last year. He was a third-string quarterback throughout the season, but last year was a redshirt year. Like, that's not a surprise in any way, shape, or form. What I do know is that 2 years ago, coming out of Utah State, he was a super dynamic quarterback. I mean, he could make plays. Every year what we're going to do is that every year during the pre-draft process, we're going to find a quarterback who's creative and fun and makes plays, and we're going to say, has some Patrick Mahomes in him. That was Zach Wilson's calling card this year, right? Well, 2 years ago was Jordan Love, who played at a Utah State program that was undermanned relative to some of the competition. We saw them play against LSU during LSU's national championship year. And, it was a tough day at the office for Utah State. I mean, LSU that year was so incredibly loaded, obviously. But I do think that Jordan Love has, some unique ability to make plays on the move. He's got a huge arm. And, these quarterbacks can sometimes be like multiple pieces of clays as young quarterbacks. You don't know what you're going to get, but depending on which coaching staff you're working with, it could turn out to be the very best version of that player. But, the Packers had enough belief in the player a year ago to use a first-round pick on him that I think it's possible he ends up having a very successful 10 or 12-year career.
Now, here's a crazy hypothetical for you. Let's say Jordan Love is a complete bust, and the Packers in the 2022 NFL Draft need to take a quarterback. Can you enlighten us on what you can tell us about the quarterbacks in the 2022 draft? Because both are really unsure about this draft coming up next year.
Yeah. So first of all, I think the Packers are probably ride it out at least one more year. But there are going to be teams that are going to need a quarterback next year. And let's not make any mistake about it. We do this every year, right? This year's quarterback class is better than next year's. Well, I've done some research, and I've also read enough mock drafts to know that next year's quarterback class looks pretty stacked to me in terms of numbers. And there are a lot of names that you're going to hear about. I think a couple that are worth noting right now just because they are the biggest programs. One, you're going to hear, I think about Spencer Rattler, potential number 1 overall pick, a redshirt freshman last year, maybe a redshirt sophomore out of Oklahoma, redshirt freshman, excuse me. Unbelievable player, ridiculous athlete. And as you guys know, Oklahoma's become, one of the best pipelines for quarterbacks to the NFL. Baker and Kyler and Jalen Hurts for his single season there. So Spencer Rattler, Sam Howell from Florida, from North Carolina, really talented guy. players had just crazy production, unbelievable rookie season, freshman season, the ACC, followed up another solid year last year. And then you're going to hear about Keaton Slavis, USC quarterback, really good as a freshman, not quite as good last year, but I think a lot of players we're going to find out that last year was much more an aberration than a real reflection of who they are. Obviously, COVID changed so much last year. So it wouldn't surprise me if he has a better bounce back year. But I'm telling you, there are a bunch of guys that you're going to hear about. They're going to be potential first-round picks. Not all of them will be first-round picks, but I think next year's quarterback class is going to end up being pretty deep.
Well, Field, we appreciate you taking the time to join us. But before we let you go, we have one final question. Last night, the NFL schedule dropped, and we're all excited because the 2021 NFL season is on the horizon. So can you tell us the one game that you're looking forward to the most next season?
Yeah, I'm going to go the non-Tom Brady returning to New England class, right? Because everybody's excited about Tom Brady returning to New England. One of the games I'm looking forward to, guys, I'm looking forward to the Bengals and also the Jaguars facing off. And I understand that it's not a quarterback versus a quarterback, right? That's just not the way that it works. It's a Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow sharing the field. I understand that it's not those two guys playing against each other, but the excitement surrounding those two certainly is enough to get me to watch that game. Thursday Night Football, Week 4. I'm looking forward to that game. I'm excited for the Bengals offense this year. I'm excited for the Jaguars in general. That is the game that I'm looking forward to.
And I have a bet with Earl and my other good friend that Jaguars win 9 games. Crazy bet, but I don't see Trevor Lawrence losing that much in the NFL.
You don't make money unless you have when you're waiting, trying to make bets, right? I got to be careful here, but if you can't just always make the safe bets, right?
Exactly. There you go. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting my money from him at the end of the season.
Okay. I love it. There you have it.
Well, Field, thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to speak with us. And the NFL season's soon, so we can't wait.
Can't wait as well. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you.